everybody. Welcome to Lifestyle Leaps. This is the first episode of a video podcast between Hannah and myself. We're happy to have you. So let's get to know each other first, and then we'll tell you a little bit about what you can expect on the journey ahead. Hannah.
Diem.
So when did we meet? How long ago was this? This was
my gosh, I don't even know.
Over a decade, probably.
Yes, probably at least 10 years.
Yeah.
I think.
And what were you doing at that time?
I think at that time I was actually in school and I was working at a film studio.
Yeah. Hannah has media experience, which I'm so jelly of, so we're going to kind of take advantage of her while she's here. But we are both into personal finance, real estate investing, kind of like building a financial security for ourselves and our family.
Yeah.
And it's something that we share in common because in real life, we're really good friends and we look out for each other. And we thought about, let's bring this journey on a podcast to kind of get you guys in on the same journey.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about like your background and why personal finance and real estate matters to you.
Okay, well, first, Diem, thank you for having me here on your channel, in your beautiful studio.
Oh, thanks. Hey, this is like our first video in this studio since I like redid the office.
And it's gorgeous.
Thank you.
Absolutely beautiful. So thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited that we get to do this together. This is so exciting. And a little bit about my background. So I grew up in a family that wasn't very focused on personal finance. And most of my life, we were going from house to house every couple years, renting, which there's nothing wrong with renting. That was part of my personal experience, and also just being very aware that we didn't have a lot of money. And so as I became an adult and as I got to thinking about, well, could I buy a house someday? Like, how do I save for retirement? Because I was coming from a family who also didn't have retirement, and that's just not something that is available to my parents right now. They didn't own their first home until much later in life. So as I was growing up, we didn't have a lot of conversations about this other than how do we pay the bills we have, because it was very paycheck to paycheck. So I started becoming interested in personal finance, and that happened because I started getting credit cards. And as I started getting credit cards, I started building credit, and I realized that I needed to know more about this. And at the time, my only experience in anything finance was Dave Ramsey. And Dave Ramsey is absolutely fabulous, especially if you're in a very difficult financial situation and you just need something very set, very steady, very straightforward to get to the next step. At this point, though, I was ready for something maybe a little bit more sophisticated to move forward. And so I started reading books about personal finance, reading books about savings and personal savings. And then that's actually where I stumbled upon Bigger Pockets. And that's what also piqued my interest in, maybe I can buy a house sooner than I thought. And it kind of just went from there. But it has been years and years getting to the point I am now where I'm still learning so much. I feel like the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know.
So true.
And the more you realize there's more to learn.
It can be stressful.
Yes, and overwhelming.
But exciting.
Very exciting. And so I feel like this journey started for me probably about 10 years ago. And I started keeping a list of books to read about personal finance and, how to get to that next step. And so fast forward to about 4 years ago, my husband and I were able to buy our first home, and we used a down payment assistance program, which was a first-time homebuyer program, and then we're able to use our other cash funds that we had started saving to help renovate that property and really, make some equity there. And then just a couple months ago, we purchased our second home, and now we are renting out that first property. So it's just been an amazing journey. And I think the whole time, the thing that I just keep thinking and the thing that keeps me going always to the next step is knowing you can do it. And no matter how far away from it you seem at the beginning, it's just that one step after the other to get to that next step so that you can move forward. And I mean, looking back now, I'm like, this is so incredible, and I'm so grateful that we're here and we have so much further to go.
Yeah.
And I'm excited that we get to all take this journey together. But it's just been so incredible, just from the start of that interest to now getting to, see our money work for us a little bit more, and have such a good friend also who has been such an inspiration along the way.
Yeah, Hannah's she's a real rock star. I was just realizing I was going to curse, but then I shouldn't do that. She's a really bad A. And so I've always had a really good friendship and working relationship with Hannah, and just to see her elevate her family's net worth, real estate investing, and then career choices, and how that has evolved over time. And it wasn't by mistake that she does what she does now. Tell them what you do.
Sure, yes. So I'm a mortgage advisor, and I do definitely specialize in first-time buyers, working with first-time buyers, and also loan products. So I specialize in really understanding different loan products that could be used. I'm also a host on the Rookie channel, the Bigger Pockets Rookie YouTube channel, which I adore, and I'm so grateful to be a part of that network and team, and just the amazing, viewers, including us. We completely, use that content still.
Yeah.
We listen to them all the time. And I actually got into this job after buying my first home. And I worked in media. That's what my degree is in and schooling is in. I worked in film and television for about 15 years. And then I decided to transition into this position because I felt like when I was buying my first home, I wish I knew how many things were possible. And I did a lot of research in order to understand what was possible, but I wish someone had been there to be like, no, you could do this, and you could do this, and you could do this, and you don't need 20% down, and this, and this, and and I just felt so passionate about it, and I dove in, was like, I feel like I could really help people with this, and I'm so glad I did.
Yeah.
It was one of the best decisions I've ever made, and I get to help people in such an incredible way, and it is so meaningful, and I'm so grateful.
I love that. So a lot of you guys may already know my journey, but I just wanted to share for those who are new and seeing me for the first time. So I was born in Vietnam. I lived in a hut with no electricity and no plumbing, immigrated to the United States, have been living on Section 8 housing ever since until I got out of college. And after college, I really struggled with starting my first business. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I just didn't quite understand how. I thought I was doing a good job, like researching, doing, a business plan, financial projections, and all the things. And it wasn't until real life experience hit me for me to realize that I didn't have the level of financial literacy, even though I was a college graduate majoring in business. And that shook me, honestly. So I got myself into a lot of debt trying to start my first business off the ground with only like $5,000 at the time to invest in that business. And I had a decision to make. How was I going to change the trajectory of my life? I started to read, my first book was Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Great book.
Then I went into listening to Bigger Pockets and realizing that it seems that real estate is the way, but how was I going to get from negative, I don't know, $50,000, $60,000 to that point when my business was finally just barely starting to pick up steam. And so I made a really tough decision, which was to file for bankruptcy. That affected my credit for some time, but I had a plan to get out of that. And 2 years after I did that, almost 3 years, I bought my first house, and that had a granny unit in the back. I house hacked it, saved money, lived there rent-free because I also had a roommate in addition to the granny in the back. And then it meant a second home and eventually a third home and a fourth home. And since then, I've never carried a credit card balance. I pay it off every single month, but it takes a lot of lessons to get me there because like my parents or my household, we always had credit card debt. We always lived in low income housing. And sometimes that's what is needed to get by. But now having made a lot of mistakes, I want to be able to share that with everybody. So hopefully other people can start on a better footing than I did. And I think that's something that Hannah and I have in common is we love learning and we love sharing. And we love learning together and sharing together. It's not about like our wisdom or what we're teaching. It's just we're going on this journey together and we want to include as many people as possible.
Yes, we do. And just to boast on this lovely lady here, she is a hustler. Diem is a total hustler, and she has sacrificed for everything, all the house hacking. I mean, that's for real. I've known her ever since she bought her first house, and have seen all the house hacking, and you know, you like to get where you want to be, sometimes you have to sacrifice and like make real sacrifice, and Diem is an amazing example of that. So you deserve everything that you have worked for.
That is so nice.
It is just true.
And similar to Hannah, so I'm a realtor now, and it didn't start that way. You know, I saw the success of what real estate meant. I saw how it changed the trajectory of my family's net worth, what our financial legacy could be, what could we leave behind if, you know, like my dad, I'm not really sure what I'm getting there, right? He bestowed on me knowledge. He bestowed on me how important it was to learn and to seize the opportunity of the American dream. But beyond that, right, I might not be able to get anything, but what could I leave behind? And that's what's going to change. So that's why I got into real estate sales, because I just want to be a part of the journey for other people. Like maybe they just want to buy a single home. That's fine. But if they also want to change the course of their life and what their next generation is going to look like I'm here for it. So with that being said, now we got to talk about what this, you know, podcast is going to look like, this video podcast that we're doing. What do you think we should talk about, Hannah?
Well, why don't we talk about just our experience, like being a first-time buyer? Like, what did that look like getting to the point of buying our first home? Because, I mean, we are going to talk about personal finance as well. And, you know, we are real estate professionals. And so I think we also want to focus on, hey, like, what does it take to get to that first home purchase? And it does tie back into personal finance. So for you, Diem, what did that look like for you first coming to that decision of, okay, I want to buy my first house? And then what did you feel like you had to do before you felt like, okay, now I'm ready. Let's go for it.
Yeah, very similar to you. I also leaned on Dave Ramsey's methodologies and teaching, like, you know, your emergency fund and eliminating debt. And for a while, I was trying to pay down my debt, but then I was like, oh, snap, that's going to be like a decade, you know, at that rate. So that's not going to work, because part of real estate investing, as I later confirmed, is that it is also a savings plan. The rental income, or even your mortgage pay down, right, is a forced savings plan that later converts into equity. And so I couldn't get there if I was really stuck in debt. So step one is to get out of debt, whatever that means for you in your personal situation. So even though part of that, because my debt came from a business startup, it wasn't from frivolous spending. It was from me trying to figure out how to launch myself into a career. I had to still navigate how to be within budget. And I did the envelope system. You know, had only spent what I had allocated. If I ran out of money for that week or that month, I was done. And so debt pay down was certainly the biggest focus at the very beginning for me. And then once I've achieved that, then it was saving. So there's like saving for a little bit of your emergency fund, which is, if something bad were to happen, you would have some cash to fall on without having to pull back that credit card into your life. And once the debt pay down or debt elimination occurred, then it was about saving for a down payment.
Okay.
Because the books that I read and the podcasts that I listened to, I realized how important home ownership is to wealth building.
Okay.
And so getting into that first home couldn't have happened simultaneously with the debt, right? I also needed to qualify for the home in terms of my debt to income ratio. So after that, I saved 3.5% down.
Okay.
And I bought the house in Ukiah, and that was 300 and something at the time. Let's say 330, 340.
Okay.
And I put 3.5% down, asked the sellers to pay for closing costs, and the rest was history.
And in that house, you did end up looking outside of your normal area that you lived in, because this was so important to you that you're like, I need to do it even if I have to move out of the area. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think, that's something a lot of people do consider is to buy this house, this first house, I move somewhere that's more affordable versus waiting 5 more years to buy something in a more expensive area. So what's your thoughts on that, or what made you ultimately decide that, that was what you needed to do?
Yeah, so when I first bought the house, I started looking in Santa Rosa. That's where I lived. But I soon found out that what I could afford was a condo. And I didn't want to live in a condo because I at least understood that I was losing money in the HOA, that it wasn't going to appreciate as greatly as a home, and I would have less ability to rent it at my preference, right? So having an Airbnb in the back wouldn't have worked, so it was just more complicated. And this was in 2016, but recently I was on an episode of Bigger Pockets Rookies podcast talking about my journey. And of course, in the comment section, there's going to be people who's like, well, now in my area, it's like $1 million. Yeah. Well, of course, now in Sonoma County, our average price is also $1 million.
Yeah.
And so you just have to start somewhere, sometime. Yes. And the sacrifice was, one, I was able to go an hour away up north to Ukiah and commute when I needed to see friends or family or for work. And then the second sacrifice is, using house hacking and having a roommate. But that launched the journey to where when I sold that property just 3 years later, I net gained $88,000 to reinvest. And now, that is a great timing in the market from 2016 to 2019. But even now in 2024, we've only really seen an upswing.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
So I'm sure you'll agree, as in your profession, you should be buying homes that you can personally afford.
Yes.
And just being able to leverage the power of rental income to help you get ahead, but not reliant on it.
Absolutely. And in qualifying, you have to be able to afford the home on paper, which the metrics are very tight. And most of the time there's income with a lot of people that we can't even use towards, qualifying income. So when people are qualifying for a home in today's qualifying metrics, it's not easy to qualify, first of all. So if you do, and you're within the debt to income ratio that you need to be, you should be able to afford that home on your own. And most of the time, not everyone is going to be buying to their max qualifying amount either. So Diem is completely correct that, when you're looking at purchasing a home, you don't want to be dependent on someone else's income to be able to make that purchase unless they're co-signing with you, right? If they're a co-signer on your loan and you know that income is going to be a part of what's happening, or if there's income somewhere else that we can't include, but is going to be increasing what you have and can make that mortgage more affordable, then great. But it's very important to be within a range that works for you. And for Diem, that meant that you were going to drive an hour.
Yeah.
Right? And for the type of house you were looking for too, you got a house with a granny unit in your price point. But you made that sacrifice to do that commute when you had to in order to start the journey.
Yeah. And I want to touch on too that I did have a cosigner. So my sister and brother-in-law at the time helped me qualify for the home because I needed an average of the past 2 years' income. And while my previous year's W-2 qualified me, the year before made that average too low. And so I needed them to get on there with me. And the exit strategy was, if I was going to keep the house long term, eventually I would refinance them out. Or if I was going to sell the home, then of course at that point they'd be out of that loan, because down the road they'll need to free up their credit space as well. But at the time they were nowhere near in sight purchasing a home of their own. And I was so grateful for their help. And I did get them a very nice gift that December for the holidays. But, you know, it does take so many components, right? That's already 3 major things to make this one thing work. But I saw an end vision in mind, and they were along for the journey.
And if you had to do it again that way, would you do it again?
I would absolutely do it again
there
that
you
way.
Go. Yeah.
Because now, you know, multiple purchases later, I think, you know, 6 purchases later or something like that, you know, we have what I would consider a financially free lifestyle where the rental income that we collect is enough for us to pay our own living expenses and groceries and our basic bills. And so the work that we do that's above and beyond that is to afford a nicer lifestyle and also save for future investments in retirement. But, you know, in just a few short years, that can happen. And it really takes that first step. So,
incredible.
Yeah. What about your first home journey? What did that look like?
So, well, as I mentioned, it was really a lot of research and growing what I like to call my money mindset. And, you know, something here that's important to talk about too is my spouse and I do not have the same money mindsets. And I was really interested in purchasing something probably 5 years before we made our first purchase. It was 5 years before.
Yeah.
But because of my ignorance as well, I didn't know either. I was like, maybe we should try. And we were both like, well, we probably can't, right? And so 5 years after that, I was like, no, we need to try. You know, we're going to try.
And a lot of us have that situation in our marriages, right?
And to my husband's credit, he was like, okay, well, you know, I'll come along for the ride and see how it goes. And now he'll tell you that first house was the best investment we've ever made. My sweet man, trusting me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
I thank you too.
But Kevin and I, my husband Kevin, we did agree on that. Okay, if we want to go towards home ownership, and in his mind it was a lot farther out than in my mind, but we both thought, okay, in order to do that, we need to start saving. We didn't have a lot of debt. That was something we both were very in alignment on, even from being single people, was we just tried to, you know, make sure we were making payments on time, like all of that. So that wasn't so much our thing as saving was, where it's like, well, we don't have savings besides like putting money into retirement, which, you know, I later learned we could use toward a house, but at that point we were not aware of that. So we decided to actually move in with a couple who their lease was up, our lease was up, and we were both living in nice apartments, you know, by ourselves. And these were our really good friends. And we were like, well, let's rent a townhome together and lower the amount of rent we're paying so we can save more. And we did that for 2 years. So we actually lived, that was our way of house hacking.
With people they liked, so that was good.
Yes, with people that we liked and knew. And we did that for 2 years, and it was incredibly fun, too. But we did that specifically so we could be saving more money. Because at that point, If we wanted to stay in the same spot we were renting, which was a very nice apartment, the rent was going to go up a couple $100 a month. We ended up lowering our monthly rent liability by over $500 a month by making that move. And so that was more money that we got to save. And that was when, we opened our first individual retirement account, our first Roth account, and we're contributing money every single month just on automatic payments.
Yeah.
We had automatic savings happening. And then after that, we decided to stay along that same track, and we rented a very small apartment, small apartment, so that we could save money. So when that opportunity ended, again, we went with something very inexpensive, very below what, our price point could be, so we could save more money. And then from that apartment, that's when we ended up buying our house. And so for us, it was really focusing on, okay, what can we do besides trying to make more money? And at the time, my husband was actually in a career shift as well. So even while we were trying to save money, there's this other big element going on too. But, it all worked out because we were staying focused on that goal. And one of the things I still do to this day and will probably never stop doing are automatic savings transfers. And so if I have a savings goal, and this is when I started doing that, I would set it to automatically transfer to either that savings account that was specifically for that thing, which for this was a down payment. I had savings account for traveling, for car maintenance, all of that, and you make these automatic transfers and you don't even have to think about it.
You can't spend what you don't
have.
So if it disappeared, you don't see it, you can't tap into it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And for me, it really worked. Everyone's different, so sometimes you have to try things, see what works for you, but that really worked for me and Kevin, and we still do it to this day. We still have certain transfers on automatic, so it's we're not going to spend it. It automatically is being saved, and that got us to where we needed to be for that down payment, which we ended up not having to use.
Crazy.
Because once I started looking into what we would need to do to qualify for a loan and start the pre-approval process, in that research, I came upon first-time homebuyer programs. And if you know me, I'm a huge deal shopper.
Major. Now, she likes nice things.
I do.
I like cheap things. She
Yes.
likes nice things for a bargain.
That's right. So I deal shop the high-end things.
Indeed.
And it's because I'm patient. I'll wait for a deal. I'm I'll wait for the clearance. I'll wait for this sale to happen. So, of course, I'm trying to deal shop while I'm buying a home.
Yeah, totally.
This last home I bought was not as much of a deal, and I'm I'm just such a deal person. This is so hard for me, but it's such a nice home, so it's okay.
And the average between her first and her second purchase, she's still ahead, so.
Thank you. So, I was trying to find anything that could be a deal, and as I always do, and I found these first-time homebuyer programs, which are available in most states. By the way, they're usually run and offered by state entities, and in some very large states and very large cities, your city might even have a couple first-time homebuyer programs as well.
Yeah.
But I went with CalHFA, which is run by the state of California, offered through them.
Yeah, and I really thought I got away with it good when I did a 3.5% down on the FHA loan on the first one. She got me beat, y'all. So you're going to have to hear that, because honestly, I think there's not that many people who take advantage of it.
Yeah.
And so to be honest, Hannah's really the only person I know in real life. And obviously with, her expertise, she can speak more about that, but that took advantage of it. And I'm like, no, there's got to be a catch that's going to rob you dry. And so I thought that was really impressive. And that just goes to show that there is just continuous layers to learn.
Yeah.
And at some point you do have to just take the next step, right? Because let's say I could have done that, learned about that and didn't have a down payment. But if I just kept waiting until I learned everything there was to learn, I would be delayed a little bit further along.
Absolutely. And if I was going to go back and do it again, I would have gone and gotten a pre-approval in 2015 when I first thought, I think we can buy a house.
Right.
Because we could have. Knowing what I know now, we could have bought that house, and we probably have 3 homes now.
Right.
So my biggest tip in this process, because Diem is exactly right, is you just have to get started. And the only way you're going to know what you qualify for is by getting pre-approved. And so the sooner you can do that, the sooner you'll know what's possible.
Yeah.
In my case, I was looking for something very specific, so I brought that with me when I was talking with my lender. However, if you're talking with a really good mortgage advisor, they're going to hopefully bring up these programs to you. And if they don't, ask about it. Ask, are there any programs for first-time home buyers? And then even if they don't know of them at that point, they could go look it up. And there's lots of resources for that pretty much at any lending company. The only place where it could be difficult is if you're going to a bank. So if you're just going to a straight standard bank, they have more limited products a lot of times. But if you're with an independent lender and all they do is mortgages, they're probably going to have that for you. So to Diem's point, the sooner you can go get pre-approved, the better. And if I was going to do it again, that would be the thing that I wish I knew, was just go and ask. Just go see what's possible. Because a lot of times things are more possible than you think.
Yeah. And that's going to be the tone of our podcast together, is just, we're just really positive people, positive thinkers. And it's interesting too that you can see in the community, even looking at comment sections, right? The same story, people reviewing the same thing, but their perspective could be, oh, I can't afford it in my area. That's not possible in today's market. Whatever it is that the messaging is, like, we do believe that where there's a will, there's a way, and you just have to, figure out what that is, what you're willing to make it happen. And so through the future episodes, we're going to be talking to you about different loan options that there are. When you're shopping for a home, what you should be looking for, if you're looking to house hack, some personal finance things.
Yeah.
What else are we going to talk about with them in the future episodes, do you think, Hannah?
Probably also just the state of the market, right? So what's going on in the market? The market's very unique right now. It's just in a very interesting place.
Indeed.
When it comes to real estate, when it comes to investing too, that's not our expertise. So maybe we'll have a guest on for that.
Yeah.
But definitely we'll be talking about, what to look out for in the market. Where do we think rates are going to go? How do we think that's going to affect home prices? What types of properties are probably going to be built because of legislation? So housing is a very big topic in the U.S. right now, and there's going to be a lot to talk about to just make sure we're all staying updated on what that looks like for all of us, because it affects all of us.
Yeah. And the tone in which we want to carry that information to you is just a conversation between two friends who happen to be in the industry.
Yeah.
And it's also because when we're not working, we do talk about this in our personal life as well.
Yeah.
So when we go have happy hour or dinners together or shopping hangouts, we talk about real estate also.
Yes. This is why we thought we should share.
Yeah.
Because we're already having these conversations and learning from each other. I learned from Diem so much. And I know that we'll also be able to learn from everyone, like you as viewers as well. There's so many things we can all learn from each other and just bring fresh perspectives on.
Yeah.
And so I think we also just want to foster a space where we can all talk about things, learn from each other, and when we find something interesting.
Yeah, so leave your questions in the comments if you've got some ideas or questions for us for topics to answer. In the next episode, I think that one will focus more on the first home purchase and help you navigate what you need to know in order to take that step. But along the way, feel free to give insight down below. And as usual, you'll have the ability to reach out to us in our contacts down below. We're going to keep this one a little bit short, and I had a really good time today.
Me too.
I hope that you guys will see some value in this. And as always, we're signing off. We will hopefully see you in a week. Bye.
Bye.